Tears rolled down her face. "Don't you dare say that, Elias. You're not leaving me again." He smiled faintly. "I promised I wouldn't let you die alone." "I meant it. Please," she whispered, pressing her hand against his wound. "Stay with me. Just this once, let me save you." The medics rushed in, carrying him away. As they disappeared through the doors, Sarath stood frozen, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. She had waited 5 years for him, and now, when he had finally returned, fate was trying to take him again. That night she sat beside his bed, refusing to leave. She held his hand tightly, whispering over and over, "You will live, Elias, you have to. I won't lose you again." Outside the palace, storms gathered once more, as if the universe itself mourned with her. And though his pulse was weak and his breath shallow, Elias Kane still held her hand back, even in pain, even in silence, because for the first time, he wasn't saving a queen. He was holding on to something far greater, a bond stronger than war itself. Days passed like fading shadows. The palace that once echoed with life now felt heavy and quiet. The attack on Elias had shaken everyone. The queen's guards were doubled, the halls guarded by soldiers day and night. But none of that mattered to Queen Sarath, because her heart and her thoughts remained in one place, beside Elias Kane's bed. He lay in the healing chamber, surrounded by soft lights and gentle hums of medical machines. His breathing was weak but steady. The human soldier who had once survived war and space now fought a quieter battle, the battle to live. Sarath stayed with him through every hour. She refused to let anyone else watch over him. Ministers came and went, bringing documents and reports, but she pushed them all away. "The Empire can wait," she said softly. "He cannot." At night, when the stars shone through the transparent dome of the healing room, she would sit by his bedside talking to him even though he could not answer. Her voice was low and tender. "Do you remember, Elias?" she would whisper. "The night you saved me? You told me no one deserves to die alone, and you vanished before I could thank you. I've waited for 5 years to tell you that." Her fingers brushed his hand gently. His skin was warm, and though his eyes stayed closed, she could feel his heartbeat, faint but alive. That small rhythm became her reason to hope. Sometimes she would fall asleep beside him, her head resting on the edge of his bed. And when she dreamed, she would see him again, standing in the fire, his blue eyes calm, his voice steady as he reached for her. She would wake with tears on her cheeks and whisper, "You came back to me. Don't go again." One evening, as the moons rose high, a soft sound broke the silence, a quiet groan. Her eyes opened at once. Elias was awake. He blinked slowly, his gaze unfocused at first, then finding her face. He tried to speak, but his voice came out rough and tired. "Sarath?" She leaned closer, her heart racing. "Yes, I'm here. You're safe. You're in the palace." He gave a faint smile. "Still alive, huh?" She laughed through her tears, brushing his hair back. "Barely. You nearly died saving me again." "I told you not to." He looked at her, his expression soft but firm, couldn't help it. "Seems saving you is something I'm good at." Sarath's smile trembled. "And what about letting me save you for once?" He was silent for a moment, then reached weakly for her hand. "Guess I could use the help." She held his hand tightly, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time in years, the walls between them felt gone. No queen, no soldier, just two souls who had survived too much and still found each other. As the days turned to weeks, Elias grew stronger. He began walking again, though slowly. The queen often joined him in the palace gardens, where the flowers glowed faintly under starlight. They spoke for hours, about Earth, about Vathar, about everything they lost and everything they still hoped to find. One night, under the twin moons, they stood together at the edge of the garden. The air was cool, the stars bright and endless. Sarath turned to him, her golden eyes soft. "Elias," she asked quietly, "why did you save me that day? You could have left me to die." He looked up at the sky, then back at her. His voice was gentle. Because when I saw you, I didn't see an enemy. I saw someone who didn't deserve to die afraid and alone, and I think a part of me didn't want to be alone either." Her chest tightened at his words. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "And now, do you still feel alone?" Elias smiled faintly and reached out, his hand brushing hers. "Not anymore." For a moment neither spoke. The stars above seemed to pause, the world around them quiet and still. Sarath felt her heart steady, her breath soft. She whispered, "You came back to me, Elias, that's all that matters." He looked at her, his blue eyes calm and warm. "And I'm not leaving again." That night, as they stood beneath the endless sky, something changed. The war, the pain, the years, and all of it faded away. What remained was simple and powerful, and the promise of a bond that neither time nor distance could break. The queen who once ruled through fear now ruled with hope. And the human who once saved her life had finally found something worth living. For the morning sky over Vathar was painted with gold and violet. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long beams of light through the palace spires. It was the day Queen Sarath had waited for. The day her people would finally meet the human who had once vanished. The man who changed everything. Elias stood beside her in the grand hall, wearing the ceremonial armor gifted by the Vathari smiths. The silver plates reflected the light softly, but his expression stayed humble, calm. He had never wanted attention or power. He had only wanted peace. Yet today, he would stand before an empire that had once called humans monsters. Sarath looked at him quietly. Her golden eyes shimmered with emotion. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Elias gave a faint smile. "Not really, but I'll try to look like I am." She laughed gently, a sound that had become rare over the years. "You'll do more than that," she said. "You'll remind them what courage really means." The palace gates opened and the vast courtyard came into view. Thousands of Vathari citizens had gathered, their silver eyes wide with curiosity. Whispers filled the air as the human appeared beside their queen. Many of them had only heard stories. The ghost of the burning sky. The human who had saved their ruler and vanished into myth. Sarath stepped forward, her long robes flowing like starlight. Her voice when she spoke was calm but carried deep strength. 5 years ago, she began, a stranger came from the stars. He was not one of us. He had no reason to help us, no duty to our empire. Yet when death came for me, he stood between me and the flames. The crowd fell silent. He saved not only me but our people, and when the war ended, he disappeared, without asking for reward, without seeking glory. She turned to Elias, her voice softening. Now he has returned, not as a soldier, not as a savior, but as a friend to our world. She stepped aside, letting him face the crowd. Elias took a slow breath. His heart beat hard, but he lifted his head and spoke simply, his voice carrying through the silence. "I'm no hero," he said. "I only did what I thought was right. Where I come from, we believe life, any life, is worth fighting for. I didn't save a queen. I saved a person, and in return she saved me too." The words were quiet, but they struck deep. The crowd listened, many with tears in their eyes. "We humans, we've made mistakes," he continued. "We've fought wars, lost worlds, and learned the hard way that peace doesn't come easy. But I believe something. I believe that no wall, no difference, no fear can last forever, not if we choose to see each other as equals." Sarath felt her heart tighten. His words, simple as they were, carried the truth she had come to believe. Then she stepped forward and took his hand, in front of everyone. The gesture shocked the court. No queen had ever done such a thing before, but Sarath didn't care. She looked at her people and said firmly, "From this day let it be known, humanity is not our enemy. They are our kin among the stars, and this man, Elias Kane, is proof of that truth." The courtyard erupted, not with fear but with applause. Cheers echoed across the palace walls, voices shouting his name in their alien tongue. Elias looked at her in disbelief, then smiled quietly. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. Sarath squeezed his hand. Yes, I did. Because I never forgot the man who saved my life, and now, I never will again. That night, as the celebrations filled the air, Sarath and Elias walked through the palace gardens one last time. The stars shimmered above, and the same stars that had once witnessed their first meeting. He looked up and said, "Funny, isn't it? How the universe can be so big. Yet somehow we end up here again," she smiled. "It's not chance, Elias, it's fate." He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Then I'm glad fate brought me back." She took his hand once more, her voice tender. "And I'm glad I waited." In that moment, under the quiet sky of Vathar, two worlds stood united, not by treaties or power, but by something far stronger. By the heart of one human, who refused to let the stars keep them apart. Elias was not a hero. He was just a man who believed in doing what was right even when no one noticed. Among the shining towers of the Zarian Empire, he looked small, fragile, and out of place. The Zarians were tall, their skin glowing faintly like sunlight on gold. Their eyes filled with the cold calm of ancient power. They ruled the stars, and humans, new to this empire, were barely tolerated guests. Elias worked as a royal guard, assigned to protect Princess Saralith, the only daughter of Queen Arathia. To the Zarians, it was a strange decision. Why would the queen choose a human for such a sacred duty? He was shorter, weaker, slower than the others. His armor looked oversized, his weapons primitive. Yet the queen had said nothing to explain it. Orders were orders. From the moment he arrived, Elias faced silent judgment. The other guards whispered behind his back, their golden eyes filled with disdain. Some even called him the fragile one or the pet, but he never responded. He simply bowed his head, saluted, and stood his post with quiet discipline. He knew what they thought of him, but he also knew something they didn't. Humans were built for endurance, not pride. The princess herself was young, curious, and full of life. Saralith was unlike her mother in many ways. While Queen Arathia carried herself like the embodiment of duty, her daughter often sneaked away from royal lessons to explore the gardens or speak to the servants. She didn't see Elias as a guard. To her he was a friend, a strange man from a faraway world who listened when she spoke. "Tell me about your home," she once asked as they walked through the crystal courtyards. Elias smiled faintly. "It's small compared to this world. Blue oceans, green forests, skies that burn orange when the sun sets. It's simple, but beautiful." She listened with wide eyes, fascinated by a world she would never see. Sometimes she asked about human customs, sometimes about his childhood, and other times about why humans always smiled, even when sad. He never knew how to answer that one. Maybe because smiling made pain easier to carry. The queen from her high throne noticed their growing bond. She didn't interfere, but she watched closely. She had lost her husband long ago, in the endless wars that shaped their empire, and she had sworn never to allow weakness near the royal bloodline again. And yet this human guard stood beside her daughter day and night. Silent, unshaken, loyal beyond measure. One evening, as Elias escorted the princess through the main hall, a group of elite guards blocked his path. They smirked, stepping forward with deliberate arrogance. "Careful, human," one of them said mockingly. "You might break if someone brushes against you too hard." Elias said nothing. He simply lowered his gaze and moved the princess behind him. "Why don't you show us that human bravery we hear about?" Another teased, reaching for his shoulder. Elias didn't move. His hand tightened on his staff, but he didn't raise it. His duty wasn't to fight for pride, it was to protect, and he would not draw a weapon in the presence of the princess. Before things could escalate, Saralith stepped forward, her voice trembling with anger. "Enough, he is my guard." "You will not speak to him that way." The guards froze, shocked by her tone. Even Elias looked surprised. The princess rarely raised her voice. The guard stepped back, bowing awkwardly before walking away in silence. When they were gone, Elias turned to her. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. Yes, I did, she replied with a small smile. Because you never defend yourself. So I will. For the first time since he had come to this alien world, Elias felt something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Not to a planet, not to a people, but to a purpose. He wasn't just a human guard anymore. He was someone's protector. That night, as the twin moons of Zaria glowed above the shining palace, Elias stood outside the princess's chamber, silent and alert. He didn't know what destiny awaited him, but deep inside, he knew something was changing. Because sometimes, in the heart of a foreign world, courage begins quietly, with a single act of kindness and a vow to protect it forever. The night of the attack began with silence. The palace was calm, its silver walls glowing under the twin moons of Zaria. The air was cool, and the gardens shimmered with soft blue lights. Princess Seralith had fallen asleep early after a long day of lessons. Elias stood outside her chamber as always, motionless, his eyes scanning the empty halls. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, but then something changed. A faint hum echoed through the corridor, low and sharp like a machine charging in the dark. Elias's hand moved instantly to the weapon at his side. His instincts screamed danger. He had learned long ago to trust them. Moments later, the light above flickered, and then everything went dark. The attack began. Shadows moved fast. 3 figures in black armor burst from the far corridor, their faces hidden, their weapons glowing red. Elias barely had time to react before the first plasma bolt struck the wall beside him. The sound tore through the silence like thunder. "Princess, stay inside," he shouted as the door behind him slid open. Seralith appeared, frightened, her golden eyes wide. "Elias, what's happening?" "Assassins," he said quickly, stepping in front of her. "Lock the door, now!" But before she could move, one of the attackers fired again. The blast hit Elias square in the shoulder, spinning him backward. The pain was sharp, white-hot, but he stayed standing. He couldn't fall. Not while she was behind him. He raised his weapon, a human plasma staff, old but sturdy, and struck back. The first attacker went down, a flash of blue light knocking him into the wall. The second charged forward with a blade, and Elias blocked it with his injured arm, sparks flying as metal hit metal. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the blood running down his sleeve. "Run, Your Highness," he shouted, but she didn't. She refused to leave. Tears filled her eyes as she watched him fight, alone against enemies faster and stronger than any human could match. He was bleeding, breathing hard, but his stance never broke. Every move, every block was made not for victory, but to keep her alive. The third attacker slipped behind him, blade raised high. Seralith screamed, "Behind you!" Elias turned just in time. The blade slashed across his armor, cutting deep. He fell to one knee, gasping. But before the assassin could strike again, Elias threw his weapon forward with all the strength left in his body. The staff hit the attacker in the chest, sending him crashing backward into the wall with a burst of blue energy. And then silence again. Elias dropped to the ground, his body trembling. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. He could barely breathe. His vision blurred, but he could still hear Seralith calling his name, her small hands pressing against his armor. "You're hurt," she cried. "Stay with me, Elias, please." He smiled faintly, even through the pain. "You're safe. That's all that matters." Within moments, royal guards rushed in, alerted by the alarms. They found 3 assassins dead, and 1 human, barely alive, covered in burns and blood, still clutching his broken weapon. When they carried him away, Seralith refused to let go of his hand. "Don't take him far," she begged. "He saved me." The guards hesitated, unsure how to treat a human with such honor. Word spread quickly through the palace. Whispers filled the halls. A human guard fought off assassins alone. He protected the princess with his body. By dawn, the story had reached the throne room. Queen Arathia listened in silence as her generals explained what had happened. At first she said nothing, but her golden eyes, usually cold as stone, softened for the first time in years. "Where is he now?" she asked quietly. In the medical chamber, Your Majesty. His wounds are severe. The queen stood, her robes of light rippling around her like waves. Prepare my escort, she ordered. I will see this human myself. And as the suns rose over Zarya, their light shining through the crystal towers, the fate of Elias, the human who had taken every blow meant for her daughter, was about to change forever. Queen Arathia entered the medical chamber with silent steps. The guards bowed deeply, but she hardly noticed them. Her eyes searched for the one she had heard so much about, the human who had bled for her daughter. The room was filled with the quiet hum of healing machines. Pale blue lights blinked along the walls and the smell of antiseptic hung in the air. Elias lay on the recovery bed, his body covered in silver healing bands. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, yet his expression was calm, peaceful even. For a long moment the queen stood there, saying nothing. She had seen soldiers fall in battle, seen death and courage in many forms, but something about this human stillness struck her heart in a way she did not understand. Saralith was sitting beside the bed, holding Elias's hand tightly in both of hers. Her eyes were red from crying. When she saw her mother, she stood quickly. "Mother," she whispered, "he saved me. He took the blasts. He didn't stop fighting until they were gone." Arathia looked at her daughter, her only child, her reason for every decision she made, and then back at the man who had protected her. She approached slowly, her long robe gliding across the floor like liquid gold. "Leave us," she said softly to the healers and guards. They obeyed immediately. The door slid shut and only the queen, her daughter, and the human remained. Arathia stopped beside the bed. She could see the burns across his skin, the cracks in his armor still clinging to his chest. She reached out, her glowing hand hovering over his heart. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why would he do this?" Saralith sniffled. "Because he's kind, Mother. He said protecting me was his duty, but I know it was more than that. He didn't want anyone to hurt me." The queen's golden eyes flickered. She remembered how, not long ago, her council had laughed when she allowed a human into her palace guard. They had called humans weak, emotional, unpredictable. Yet this one had done what even her finest Zarian warriors could not. He had given everything without hesitation. Arathia sat beside the bed, studying his face. "Wake up, human," she whispered, her voice almost trembling. "I wish to see the eyes of the one who defied death for my blood." Hours passed. The queen waited in silence, refusing to leave. Finally Elias stirred. His eyes opened slowly, those deep human eyes, weary but alive. When he saw her, he tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "Your Majesty," he whispered, his voice rough. "Forgive me. I failed to keep the fight from reaching her chamber." Arathia blinked, surprised. "You think you failed?" "I was supposed to protect her without harm coming near. I couldn't stop them fast enough." For a moment the queen could not speak. She had expected arrogance or pride, but instead she found humility. He had nearly died, and yet all he cared about was what he didn't accomplish. "You saved her life," she said quietly. "You stood alone against trained assassins. You fought when your body was already broken." Elias gave a faint smile. "That's what humans do, Your Majesty. We don't stop until the people we care about are safe." Those words touched something deep inside her. In her long reign, she had commanded armies, conquered worlds, and made peace through power. But she had forgotten what it meant to protect someone out of love, not duty. She looked at him closely, and for the first time in many years her voice softened. "Rest, human. You are safe here. You have my word." Elias nodded weakly, closing his eyes again. As the queen stood, her daughter reached for her hand. "Mother," Saralith said quietly, "he's not like the others. He's good." Arathia looked once more at the man lying before her, the human who had changed the course of their lives in one night. "Yes," she said softly, "he is." When she left the chamber, the queen's heart felt heavier than before. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like a ruler. She felt like a mother who owed a debt that could never be repaid. and deep inside she knew. This human had done more than save her daughter. He had awakened something she thought long dead inside her. Hope. Days turned into weeks and the palace slowly returned to calm. The halls that once echoed with fear were now filled with whispers. Whispers of the human guard who had stood against death itself. Every servant, every soldier, every noble in the royal court had heard his name. Elias, the human who protected the princess with his own body. In the medical wing, Elias's condition began to improve. His body, though broken, healed slowly under Zarian medicine. The silver healing bands on his chest and arms glowed softly as they repaired the tissue and bones. Yet even as he rested, his thoughts were not of himself. He thought of the princess, her frightened eyes that night, her trembling voice as she tried to wake him. The memory of her tears haunted him more than any pain in his body. Princess Soralith visited him every day. She would bring him small gifts, flowers from the royal garden, books from her study, sometimes just her company. She would sit near his bed and talk endlessly about the world outside, her voice light and full of warmth. "You missed the sunrise today," she said one morning, holding a small glowing blossom. "It looked like your world's sky. Orange and soft. I thought you'd like it." Elias smiled faintly. "Thank you, Your Highness. But you don't have to visit me every day," she frowned. "I want to. You saved me. I can't just forget that." Her words filled the quiet room like sunlight. Even though his wounds hurt with every breath, Elias felt a strange peace whenever she was near. Her kindness reminded him of home, of the people on earth who smiled through hardship, who believed in helping others simply because it was right. Sometimes Queen Arathia herself came to check on him. She always arrived in silence, her golden robes gleaming in the soft light, her expression unreadable. She would stand by his bed for a while, watching him without saying much. But her eyes told a story, a mixture of curiosity, gratitude, and something she could not name. One afternoon she finally spoke. "You recover quickly, human. I am told your body still fights even when broken." Elias sat up slowly, wincing as he bowed his head. "Humans are stubborn, Your Majesty. We don't give up easily." Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "So I have seen." There was a pause, and then she asked, "Why did you protect her so fiercely? You could have fled. No one would have blamed you." Elias looked down at his hands. "Because she's innocent. Because she trusted me. And when someone trusts you with their life, you don't run." Arathia studied him for a long moment. His voice carried no pride, no ambition, only truth. It was rare in her world, a place where loyalty was often traded for power. She turned to leave but stopped at the door. "You have earned the gratitude of a queen, Elias. That is not a small thing." After she left, Elias lay back and stared at the ceiling. The queen's words echoed in his mind, but what he remembered most was her tone. Behind the calm authority there had been something else, something almost human. Outside the chamber, Arathia walked through the corridor, her heart heavy with thoughts. She had seen bravery before, but never like his. The Zarians were powerful, yes, but they fought for glory, for honor, for empire. The human had fought for something far simpler and purer: love. That night, Arathia stood on her balcony, looking at the stars that dotted the endless black sky. Her daughter's laughter echoed from the garden below, where Elias had begun to take slow steps with her help. Watching them, the queen realized something she hadn't felt in years: peace. She whispered softly to herself, "Perhaps there is strength in gentleness after all." And deep within her, a new thought began to grow, one that frightened and fascinated her both. The thought that this human, this fragile creature of flesh and heart, might be the one to change not only her daughter's life but her own. Peace never lasts long in a palace built on pride. As Elias's strength returned, so did the whispers. The Zarian nobles could not accept what they were seeing: a human walking beside the royal family, speaking to the queen and her daughter as if he belonged there. To them, humans were a lesser race, newcomers to the stars who should know their place. But Elias walked with quiet confidence, not arrogance. He didn't bow too low nor speak too loudly. He simply existed with the calm of a man who had nothing to prove, and somehow that angered them more. Rumors began to spread through the court. Some said the queen favored him too much. Others claimed he had used human tricks to charm her daughter. The words grew sharper each day until they finally reached the High Council, the powerful group that advised Queen Arathia. During the next council meeting, Elias was called to stand before them. The grand chamber glowed with gold and white light, filled with towering nobles whose faces were carved with scorn. The queen sat upon her high throne, her expression calm but her eyes unreadable. Councillor Vareth, an old and proud Zarian, stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he began, "we must speak of this human. His presence beside the royal bloodline brings shame to the throne." The people whisper. The image of Zarya weakens, the queen's gaze was sharp. "This human saved my daughter's life when your guards failed. Speak carefully, Counselor." Vareth bowed slightly, though his tone dripped with arrogance. "Even so, Majesty, he is not one of us. His kind are impulsive, emotional, they act without logic. You risk much by allowing him near the princess again." Elias stood still, saying nothing. He had faced worse words before on earth and beyond. Still, something inside him stirred. Not anger, but sorrow. He had done everything to protect this world, and yet they saw only what he was, not who he was. Finally, he spoke softly, his voice steady. "I understand your fears, Counselor. I'm not Zarian. I don't expect your respect. I only did what any decent man would do. I protected an innocent child. I never asked for reward or honor." His words fell into silence. The nobles glanced at each other, unsure how to respond. Arathia watched him closely. There was no pride in his tone, no hidden motive, only sincerity. It was the kind of honesty that no amount of power could fake. But Vareth wasn't done. "Words are easy, human," he sneered. "You may act noble, but your place is not beside royalty. Perhaps you should return to your world before you cause more trouble." Elias met his gaze calmly. "If that is the queen's wish, I will leave," he said. "But I will never regret what I did." The queen rose slowly from her throne, her golden aura filling the chamber. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of thunder. "Enough," she said. "This man has done more for this empire than any of you sitting here. He risked everything for my bloodline while others hid behind their titles." Her words silenced the hall. Every noble bowed their head as her eyes burned with quiet fury. She turned toward Elias. "You will stay," she said firmly. "Not as a servant, but as a protector of the crown." Elias bowed deeply. "As you command, Your Majesty." That night after the meeting, the queen found him standing alone in the garden. The silver light of the moons reflected off his armor. "You didn't have to defend me," Elias said quietly. "It will cause you trouble." Arathia looked at him, her expression softer than ever. "Let them talk," she said. "They have forgotten what honor means." "Boo,"